Hey guys, welcome to today's episode. So I'm here on Estorils Beach in Costa Rica. Today's episode is going to be 5 things I would have done differently in my 20s. So right now I'm 33 years old. And when I look back at my 20s, overall, it was a great decade. It started off extremely difficult. It ended extremely difficult. But for the majority of those years, I had a great time. But there are things that I would have done differently. And the first big thing, which I'm going to share with you, is value experiences a lot more than material things, or even saving for the future. And let me explain. Everyone tells you when you're in your young 20s that you should save your money, start saving for a house, start saving for this big future that you're going to have. And while that's okay advice, what I learned in my late 20s, I learned how fragile things can really be. And nothing is guaranteed. You never know what's going to happen tomorrow. You never know how short things are going to be. So if you're always saving to enjoy this money in the future is not guaranteed. What I'm going to suggest to you instead is spend a good portion of your money on yourself and experiences that will enrich your life and that you're going to remember for a long time. So one of those experiences is travel. That's one thing that I did correctly, which I'm very happy about for my 20s. I traveled a lot. First big trip I went on was to Singapore, and I just started making decent money in my career. So I went to Singapore. Shortly after that, I started traveling to the US a lot. And then I found a way to incorporate my work and travel and kind of mix them. I started doing events around the world and traveling a lot. Now, you might be in a career where you can't easily travel, but when you get vacation time, if you had the choice between taking all your money that you're making from your job and saving for this future, saving for this house sometime in the future, or spending a good portion of it on travel, my honest advice is spend it on the experiences, spend it on travel. Go and see the world, go and see different things, experience the world. So travel, invest in experiences. Okay, now the second point is learn to control your emotions. This is something that I do regret when I look back at my 20s. This is one area that I definitely needed to improve upon. If you are someone who's emotional, sometimes you react in an emotional way, and I'm talking, this is more about your career, but also about relationships as well. Always put off responding for a period of time so you can cool down, reflect, and get control over your emotions. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you're at work and someone does something that you really don't like. Maybe someone's working for you, you are their manager, or maybe you're working for your manager, and it pisses you off. You get really annoyed by it. The temptation is sometimes to react out of emotion and to send them a text, an email, to say things from a place of anger or frustration. And often it's an overreaction, and often it has consequences that don't exactly help you long term. And I found myself doing this a lot in my work. Sometimes I would get frustrated or annoyed at certain people, and I would respond in a way that was just over the top. I would say things that I shouldn't have said in hindsight. So one of the best pieces of advice that I ever got around this, I'm a big fan of Warren Buffett, the billionaire investor. And he's always talking about a friend he's got. I think it's a manager of a company that he invests in. And I think the guy's name is Tom Knapp. But this guy would always say to Warren, you can always tell him to go to hell tomorrow. And Warren Buffett repeats it a lot. And what he means by that is, if someone bothers you or does something that really annoys you, you can respond at that moment, tell them to go to hell, and you can say things which the next day you might regret, or you can wait until tomorrow. You can put it off until tomorrow. What often happens is if you put it off until tomorrow, then you can sit down, you can think, you can reflect, you can calm down. So if someone bothers you or does something which annoys you, don't respond out of emotion. Take some time to collect your feelings and respond the next day in a calm manner. So point number 3 is learn through doing versus studying or reading. This is a big one because up until your 20s, most of us, we've been in school, and if you finished high school and then you went to college, university, and you were studying, everything that you've ever known in your life when it comes to learning was through studying, reading books, watching videos, taking notes, and passing tests. But in the real world, you soon figure out that you don't really get paid, or you don't get results for what you learn. It's got nothing to do with that. It's all about what you do, what results you produce. So I'll give you a personal example. I went to university. I never finished university. I was there for, I think, 3.5 years, studying business, psychology, philosophy. I kept changing around, but I finished on business, and I was close to graduating, and then I dropped out to start my business, and I focused on that throughout my 20s. But in those first few years, I really struggled. And one of the main reasons is because I was so used to university, where you have this textbook, you have to make notes, and it's all about learning, right? It's all about studying more and more. So that's what I did in my business. Now, people do this in their career as well. They keep on studying. And after a number of years of doing that and not getting results, I reached the point where I just decided, you know what, I'm just gonna start executing. I don't have all the answers, I don't feel like I'm ready, I don't feel like I know enough, but I'm just going to start executing. And that's what I did. I started taking a massive action, but I started applying at a rate which scared me, but I was actually doing things, getting results from the real world, getting feedback from the real world. And that was the big turning point, where I decided I'm gonna stop buying books, always buying books and studying, buying more courses. And I'm gonna start putting 90% of my focus on action, on applying. So that was a big one. So the next thing is be careful with choosing mentors. This one's really important. I think when you're in your 20s, you're younger, and you often look to people for guidance. You wanna have mentors, people who are gonna help you in your career, business, whatever it is. And I think particularly in your young 20s, you're always looking around for, who do I follow? Who do I learn from? And I did that a lot. I had a lot of different mentors, and I invested a lot of money with some of these people, paying them money for consulting, for guidance, for mentorship. And the problem is, sometimes they don't always have your best interests at heart. There were certain people, and I don't need to go into details, but there were certain people that I paid a lot of money to over the years, which in hindsight, even though they would tell me they had my best interest at heart, and they would often say things like that, in hindsight, they definitely did not. So I think in your 20s, you've got to be very careful with who you choose to learn from, who you invest in when it comes to guidance. Just be careful with that. So if they have a vested interest in getting something from you, then you always have to question their motivations. It could be in your career. Maybe there's some vested interest in keeping you at a certain job in a certain position because it's going to benefit them. Maybe if you're paying them a lot of money, it's just about the money. Okay, so just be very careful with who you choose to learn from and who you choose as mentors. So last one, enjoy the journey more than the process. And I know that sounds cliched, you've heard that before, but one of the things that I did in my 20s, which I do regret when I look back, is I was always focused on the next thing, right? Getting to the next level, always focused on bigger, better. I can do, not being content with where I was, and just always focused on this destination. And when I would achieve the destination that I was aiming for, I never really sat down and enjoyed it. I always thought, okay, now I'm here, now I want to get there. It was always next. What's next? What can I achieve next? So the problem with doing that is you're always chasing something, and you just don't realize how fragile things are. Things can happen in life, and I had one of those big events. You probably know what I'm talking about. I think everyone does at this point. But things can happen. Someone close to you can die, you can get in an accident. Things can happen that you just don't see coming, and you can wake up the next day and it can all be gone. So enjoy the process, enjoy the journey, celebrate along the way, because when you look back on it, it's often those challenges, those things that you had to overcome, which you remember with the most fondness. You think, wow, that was great that I was able to get through those challenges. That's what you remember as opposed to the actual destination you achieved. Okay, so those are some things to keep in mind. I'll make another one of these in 10 years from now about my 30s, but for your 20s, keep those in mind. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe, click on the button below, and I'll see you in the next episode.